Good morning. Good morning and good afternoon to the East Coast, Kenko and Emmy. I don't mind gallery view, but you can, I'll leave you in charge of that. It's kind of nice to see everybody. Okay. So
you can change your view to gallery view, but I cannot because then everyone will be visible on the recording, and that's a no-no.
Super. Okay. Okay. Thank you. It's nice to see everybody. So today I'm thankful to be here, and I wanted to share my my questions, some of my questions I had this last year, and they revolve around Buddhist ethics. So I'm going to share a class I took at ZCLA, and the name of the class was Sangha Sutra. So I'll explain a little bit about that. And then I'd like to also kind of explore what is Sangha. And I will share my notes of what I've gathered. I'm trying to answer that question. So to begin with, ZCLA offered last winter, they offered a class called Sangha Sutra, and I was curious, not knowing exactly what it was. And it turned out to be a look at their, a little bit of their history and a lot of their governance. So it's very, very lengthy, and there was a lot of words. So Emma, so what I'm going to do is give you a summary of what I learned and what I think is important. And what they were doing, what they've been doing is restructuring and reorganizing since the 1980s, since, a lot of falling apart where it happened with many organizations. So I'm going to start, and this is part of their reorganizing and their restructuring with their core values. And I think they're valuable to share them. I'm going to start with their mission, which is the Zen Center's mission is to provide the training and resources for realizing the oneness of all life, to maintain the precepts and to embody the three tenets of not knowing, bearing witness, and taking action. We provide the teaching, training, and transmission of Zen Buddhism. For their foundational values, we take responsibility for creating a strong foundation to protect the Dharma. Specifically, we will, and then they list a lot of ways they do this, but I'm going to share with you number 4, nurture close and healthy relationships within the Sangha. And we will, again, there's a lot, but I'm going to take out 2 that I'm interested in. So we will extend ourselves to all others politely and with respect. And another one is, we will act to support one another physically and emotionally, especially in times of need. Another one of their values is Sangha values. I've picked out a couple. Help create a climate of mutual trust and confidence in which all can speak and listen from the heart. Honor diversity and seek collective wisdom. Our vision, which they also called Buddha vision, is to practice Zazen, maintain the precepts, serve others, live the truth of interconnectedness. Core practices. They have a lot of core practices, but I would like to just mention that among them is atonement, counsel, Fu Shin Zamu, which is working together on a common project. They also include koans, precepts, shared stewardship, study, the three tenets, and Zazen. I'm going to go on now to a little bit of how they organized. So their restructuring includes the center mandala. So then they chose the mandala because it's a circle of life as they see it, and they chose it as it represents the activities of our lives. That's how they see it. And they use the mandala to keep the big picture and to keep connected to the big picture and with one another. They see the parts of the circle or the mandala as spheres, where every part is part of the whole. It says the practice of shared stewardship is to realize and manifest in our daily functioning this underlying interfusion of all aspects of the mandala. All activities required to maintain and run the center are carried out as Zen training. This is their approach to governing. The circles may arise from any part of the mandala. All circles are led by a steward. They develop from a purpose and core values that are in accord with the center's overall mission. Some circles arise and dissolve. Some become established to stewards as key functions or spheres. So, for instance, there are 5 spheres. There's the Buddha sphere, the study sphere, the resource sphere, the relationship sphere, and the service sphere. I'll just let you know that the Buddha sphere is the spiritual leader, or now it's Roshi Ekkokyu Nakao. Was very instrumental in a lot of this restructuring. And then for another example, I'd like to just tell you the circles within the study sphere. So there's the teacher circle, which includes teachers in training and all Dharma successors. There's the library, the priest circle, all the programs, practice periods, classes, sessions, and introductory programs, and the temple functions. And the temple functions include the Zendo and the Buddha Hall, the Tenzo, and the altar coordinator. The study sphere also includes guest speakers and the quarterly newspaper, their water wheel. So now we get to go on to the ethical guidelines. And here we find 5 different documents. One of them is the Sangha Sutra document. There's also the Statement of Right Conduct, Conflict Resolution, and their grievance procedure, and the Statement for the Ethics for Teachers. So a very brief history is the Sangha Sutra states briefly the history, a lot of the history of, including a lot about Taizan Maizumi, and that it was founded in 1967. It also notes respectfully that the land was home to the Tongva people for thousands of years. It's been home to many ethnic groups: African Americans, Japanese Americans, European Americans, Hispanic Americans, Vietnamese Americans, and Korean Americans. All have come seeking a better life. The area is now called Koreatown. So what is Sangha? What is the Sangha Sutra? According to ZCLA, they say a Sangha is formed when 3 people who have taken refuge in the 3 treasures practice together. For the Buddha is awakened realization, the Dharma the teachings, and the Sangha the community of practitioners, especially those who have taken refuge. Although it is often noted that the emphasis is on individual awakening, today we speak of collective awakening. ZCLA strives to embody a collective awakening. Every facet of ZCLA itself is designed as a skillful means for awakening and living awake together. The main issues of ethical conduct that they found and they thought needed to be identified and understood were probably the usual, but I get to read them: power, sex, money, and addiction. In addition are fundamental dynamics that everyone needs to understand and help prevent abuse and misconduct. So these dynamics include interpersonal dynamics, such as triangle projection, transference, and countertransference, spiritual bypassing, being a bystander to misconduct, trauma, the shadow aspects of spiritual practice, lack of skills, such as how to have a difficult conversation. So in 1997, they introduced the practice of counsel. Ekioku introduced the counsel of the practice of counsel. So just to note that the troubles were really in the 1980s, so this is almost 20 years later. So it takes time, and in 2000, some healing circles were created, and they were started in the 90s. In 2010, a teacher's circle began to formulate an ethics statement. In 2015, HEAR, or the HEAR Circle, which stands for Hearing, Ethics, and Reconciliation, was established. The members of this HEAR Circle, they worked on the Statement of Right Conduct and their conflict resolution and the grievance procedures and the teacher's ethics statement. And today, the HEAR Circle educates individuals on issues of power abuse, sexual abuse, and also every teacher, priest in training, and senior student. Their goal is for everyone who practices at ZCLA to have training on these issues and the 16 Bodhisattva precepts, and to reflect deeply on their own conduct. Zen training in our community means that each person must commit to knowing themselves on a very deep level. So with ending the ZCLA ethical guidelines and my notes on their governing, I just also want to note that they said each Zen Center member will be asked to agree to abide by the Zen Center's ethic policies. So Dogen says, what is practice? Everywhere, nothing is hidden. I'd like to turn now to my notes on what is Sangha. And in doing so, of course, not of course, but Thich Nhat Hanh comes up. And surprisingly enough, he wrote a little commentary on what is Sangha. So to share his words, some of his words, a Sangha is a community of practice. The essence of Sangha is awareness, understanding, acceptance, harmony, and love. A Sangha can provide a second chance. The whole cosmos is preaching the Buddha Dharma and practicing the Buddha Dharma. First, we have to recognize dukkha and look deeply into the nature to find out, to find a way out. To understand is to find a way out. To understand is to call it by its name, by its true name. Loneliness, not in accord with. not conforming, alienated, cast out. A lot of these sound separate to me. Maybe that was his point. He also says, in my tradition, we learn that as individuals, we can't do much. Individualism has its problems. One doesn't take refuge with others. We need Sangha. The Sangha is not a place to hide in order to avoid your responsibilities. It's a space to practice for transformation in the healing of self and society. A true Sangha, says Thich Nhat Hanh, should be like a family in which there is a spirit of brotherhood and sisterhood, where we can stay strong for our brothers and sisters, friends and loved ones, and neighbors. Being strong means being able to embrace the suffering in us and all around us. Being able to embrace it with some warmth and softness. This helps us also from letting despair get too overwhelming. We need a Sangha for our bodhicitta, the strong desire to cultivate love and understanding in ourselves, beautiful and very strong. Then we can share. The Sangha provides us with vitality, like the soil. We are the seeds. So also, I came along some work by Bhikkhu Bodhi, and he has an article just in the beginning of the year at Lion's Roar called "The Whole Path is Ethics." So the Eightfold Path, or the way to the cessation of suffering, as Buddha called it, are the 8 factors that precisely lead to the end of suffering. They're divided into 3 sections corresponding to the 3 phases of Buddhist trainings. So we have the first 2, right view and right intention, are assigned to the wisdom group. Right speech, right action, right livelihood to the ethical group. And right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration to the concentration group. The right view distinguishes between the wholesome and the unwholesome. The wholesome consists of the good action arising, non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion. The unwholesome consists of the bad actions rooted in the greed, hatred, and delusion. The 8 factors in all of the Eightfold Path are designed for goodwill and wholesome actions. We can see that the right intention arises from the right view. Right intention is the goodwill, non-harming, opposed to the selfish view of craving or too much craving, harming or developing harmful habits or harmful ways. We also know and can reflect that right intention serves as motivation for right speech, right action, and right livelihood. The Eightfold Path of moral discipline is a guide for upright conduct, to be upright and forthright, and to keep our feet planted or grounded in the middle. Bhikkhu says, there's an ethical dimension in moral discipline, which is the basis for training in meditation. Meditation is a process of gradual mental purification, of restraining and eliminating mental defilements, so that moral conflict and meditative practice are intricately interwoven, strengthening each other. Early Buddhism sees the Arhat as a model of ethical propriety. Arhats no longer have to walk the path, but remain intrinsically endowed with the 8 factors. So what remains, you might ask? Intrinsically endowed with the 8 factors. and everything as it arises. This is liberating, I think. Ethical conduct prevents the defilements from erupting in verbal and bodily actions and rattle the mind and cloud the capacity for clear recognition, for clear cognition. With defilements cut off at the root, the door to nirvana swings wide open. So that is the case for the Eightfold Path, which is another name. Or that I do believe that ethics is the heart of our practice. Thank you, Bhikkhu. I can't help but mention a little bit of Kata Gary. He gave us so much during his book study. He does talk about total dynamic activity, and I'm going to read a little bit what he says, just a little bit, because I can't help it. Your life is moving with the whole universe, he says. When you see this energy in terms of your own life, it is called individual effort. Before that, it has no name. It's the dynamism. If we give a name to it, this movement of life is called great effort or universal effort. Universal effort is there first, and then it appears in various aspects of your life as your individual effort. We use the terms individual effort and universal effort, but actually there is no gap between them. You take care of universal effort by your individual effort. And a few comments on what he thinks about precepts. And he says, the name of this part of this chapter is the deep meaning of precepts. So it gives you an idea of what he talks about, which is really lovely. And so here's my take on his chapter. In the big scale of life, precept is the activity of the whole universe, which naturally ripens a tree's life, a person's life, and the life of all sentient beings. This is the most important meaning of precept. You can use Buddha's precepts as a practical guide for how to take care of human life in the small scale, but first accept the precepts as the manifestation of the whole universe. Accept the precepts as the life of mountains, sky, and all sentient beings, and make them alive as your own. He goes on to talk a little bit about Sangha. And of course, Sangha was developed years ago to be a peaceful place where they were able to demonstrate to human society a way of living in harmony with others. And although we may strive for that still, of course, conflict does arise. And I wanted to read you his take on how to meet with conflict. I lost the page. Here it is. For instance, if you see something lacking from someone in the Sangha and find it is necessary to give a correction, don't bark at them. Instead of giving harsh words, give your hand. Just walk with that person, sharing your good aspects, not expressing criticism. Instead of saying your work is clueless or your work is careless, offer your hand as if they were stumbling on a rock. So to end with Kata Gary, He says, your understanding of precept is not a matter of intellectual teaching. It is a matter of direct experience. The universe is going in a certain system and rhythm. It's not random. When that rhythm is alive in human life, it is called the precepts. Thank you, Katagiri. I would like to end with Norman Fisher because he wrote an article called Life is Tough. Here are 6 ways to deal with it. So you may know the old saying, the whole world's upside down. It was new to me, and so I wanted to let you know that this is a story to illustrate this. Once there was a Zen master who was called the Bird's Nest Roshi because he meditated in an eagle's nest high up at the top of a tree. It is said that once the Song Dynasty poet Shu Shi, who was also a government official, went to visit. Standing on the ground far below the meditating master, called up and asked him, what possessed him to live in such a dangerous manner? The Roshi answered, you call this dangerous? What you are doing is far more dangerous. Living normally in the world, ignoring death, impermanence, and loss, and suffering, as we all routinely do, as if we were normal and safe, as if it was a normal and safe way to live. Actually, much more dangerous than going out on a limb to meditate. And another way of saying that is that the conventional way to view the world is pretty much opposite of the way the world actually is. So sometimes we try to avoid difficulties and pain. So while trying to avoid painful situations may be natural and understandable at times, it actually doesn't work, as we know. Our self-protection or attempts for self-preservation or protection can often cause deeper pain. So Norman Fisher points out, here are 6 mind training lojong slogans to help us. First one is turn all mishaps into the path. Second, drive all blames into one. Be grateful to everyone. See confusion as Buddha and practice emptiness. Do good, avoid evil, appreciate your lunacy, and pray for help. The last one, whatever you meet is the path. I'd just like to comment on a couple of them. For instance, turn all mishaps into the path. Mishaps may require patience, and not everything is as it seems. Our egos may be hurt. We may experience suffering, or so we think. But hold on and have patience. So patience is our friend here, because we'll soon discover impermanence. We also have the gift to notice, or as human beings, we have the ability to watch ourselves. So here is our zazen. Here is our practice. Here's a quote from Norman. Be fiercely present with uncomfortable emotions, understanding that they are natural in these circumstances. Whatever the circumstances might be. So, and number 6, whatever you meet is the path. Whatever it is, If it's hard, if it's soft, if it's good, if it's bad, if it's unpleasant, if it's right or wrong, if it's this or that, this is just what you think. It's not what's going on. Everything is practice. Just keep going, as Koan would say. Once you begin practice, you always keep going, because everything is practice. It's impossible to be lost. You are constantly found. You are constantly being found, being lost, being found. No matter what's going on, no matter how distracted you may be or how low you may feel, whatever you meet is the path. Thank you, Norman Fisher. And thank you, everyone. I hope it wasn't too wordy. Thank you for letting me share.